Let us bring in Christopher Hill. He's former U.S. ambassador to Iraq and Korea. Ambassador, you know the region. This time, this horrific attack on the town of Idlib, Syria, about 6:30 a.m. Syria time, a bomb blast was heard, and almost immediately, people were overcome with burning skin. They were found on the streets, look at this, choking and foaming at the mouth or already dead. 100 killed, according to Fox News, 11 children, one of them as young as a year old. It looks like President Trump is saying definitively it was Bashar al-Assad. What does it look like to you?
Well, again, I haven't seen confirmation of that, but it sure looks a lot like the Syrian government forces have done this. Now, why they've done this, why they've chosen to do this at this time is hard to say. As everyone knows, they've been rather winning the war recently. So this is quite a hideous and kind of remarkable thing. So now the question is, what is our president going to do about it? You recall last time President Obama called it a red line, said he would do something, but when he consulted with others, he decided not to do anything. Congress didn't want to do anything. No one wanted to do anything. The British pulled back. So he ultimately just decided his red line wasn't really a red line. So let's see what this president decides to do.
Well, the president is backed by a chorus at the moment of military who are very concerned, and it doesn't sound like President Trump has any love lost for Bashar al-Assad. This as the Russians are helping Assad fight the so-called rebels who are against the government. But you have to tell us what you sense should be the right plan of attack. We tried diplomacy.
Well, it seems to me we have to find out what we have to get some more details. But if this is indeed what we think it is, I think we have to strike the Syrians and strike them hard. And I wouldn't just do some kind of symbolic pinprick. I think we have to strike them and hit them hard. And I think the president needs to be very clear.
The royal area, wherever he
No,
he
I'm
works?
not talking about hitting. I'm not talking about hitting palaces. But I would go after the military, especially those who've apparently been involved with this. But I think also the president needs to have some heart-to-heart discussions with the Russians on this, because the Russians knew, if this is as we think it is, the Russians must have known about this capability, and in effect they are accomplices to this. So I think our president needs to be very clear on this.
Reports are it may have even been a Russian jet that dropped it, although again this is just from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. They're not sure. But speaking of Russia, it's a very touchy subject with the administration, and especially considering the new revelations about the former NSA chief Susan Rice coming out, and now she's been fingered as the person who had unmasked the names of some of these people in the Trump administration who had been apparently I guess, you know, on the part of the espionage, on the bad end of the espionage issue, but she would have no obvious need to unmask the Trump campaign officials other than for political reasons. That's what the Journal is saying. You've worked in national security. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you often get these intelligence reports, and they refer to American number one, American number two, and everyone's kind of curious, you know, who did this? And generally speaking, I don't know of any case where someone has so-called unmasked the American talking to the foreigner. So this is an example of how this intel works. But I want to be very clear on this. That has nothing to do with really the issue of what the Russians are doing in Syria. That we need to be very clear about what the Russians are up to, and I think our president needs to be very clear not only with the Russians but also with us.
We've got to go, but North Korea, Kim Jong-un, it appears now that you have top military men who are saying, General Jack Keane, who's a contributor here, saying, I see no other path but to do a military move against Kim Jong-un and North Korea. They are setting off bombs right and left, trying to test missiles. What say you? Is diplomacy dead on this front?
Well, first of all, I don't see there's any talking to the North Koreans. I don't think this is a matter of diplomacy with the North Koreans. I do think there's a lot of need for regional diplomacy. For example, we need to be in very, very close contact with the South Koreans. After all, some 20 million South Koreans are already within range of North Korean artillery. We need to be talking to the South Koreans. But I think it's very important that President Trump try to sit down with the Chinese and kind of lay out what our concerns are and what we would do and what we won't do. So I think it's a very timely meeting that he's having in Mar-a-Lago with the Chinese president, and I hope there can be an understanding. I realize that's an example of hope over experience, because we've not been able to do much with the Chinese, but the idea that we can just go it alone on this, I think, is folly.
Ambassador, good to see you. Thank you very much.